There we go. Good. So we're going to go back to the test from last week right now. And we had two translations that appeared, and both of you guys did pretty well. But they weren't, I don't think they were exactly right. Maybe one of you got one of them exactly right. So there's just maybe a couple of little things that we can point out. Let's see, Winfield, take the first one, please. And I'll type as you go.
Okay. Thanks. Hop has two on. Krina tie is my side tie. Oh boy. He judges not. He that believes in him. He. Judges not. I'll have to come back to it.
Okay. Let me point something out right here, Winfield. You're on the right track. Krino means judge. And if you look at the ending, it's a middle passive ending, so it's going to have a middle passive translation.
Yeah. Yeah, we're getting there, so. So it's he that believes in him is judged or is.
Don't forget this
is
little.
Not judged.
This
is
little
not
word.
Judged.
Is not judged. There you go.
Judged. There you go. But
we'll keep the he there.
Yeah, but he who is, but he who believes not. I'm familiar with the passage, so I'm not trying to cheat a little bit. He that believes not.
That's okay.
Believes is not judged, but he who believes not. That's now. I think it's translated as already.
You're right.
And then that's the perfect form of judge. So, he who believes not is judged already.
There you go.
He who believes is judged already.
That's one could debate. This is technically a perfect form. You see the reduplication here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if krinitai means he is judged, kekritai, which is also middle passive, would be he has been judged. There's a lot of overlap with the present significance. The perfect tense is past action, continuous results. It takes those primary endings, just like the present tense does. I wouldn't say is judged already is bad translation, but we could make it a little more specific, include has been judged already.
Has been judged
but
already.
I wouldn't. It's kind of like splitting hairs here.
Yep. No, that makes sense. Because he that is believed. So has believed not in the name. He does not has believed not in the name of the only begotten Son of God.
There you go. All right. So from the beginning, he that believes in him is not judged, but he who believes not has been judged already, because he has not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. Yeah. That's exactly right. So we, with participles, we're right now, at least the way it's organized in the textbook, is we're talking about adverbial participles, and that means when the participle doesn't have an article, it's generally modifying the verb more than it's modifying a particular noun. When it has the noun, it's adjectival, and as such it can be substantival, and that's what it's doing here. Ha pistuan is the one who is believing, or the one that believes, he that believes, something like that. It stands alone, it has a verbal idea within it, but it's technically a participle, a verbal adjective. But in our translation, you can see that it has very much a verbal translation.
So if it has the article, it's adjective.
Yeah,
right?
that's right. That's right. It functions a little more like a noun, an adjective or a noun when it has the article. When it doesn't, it's modifying. It's more adverbial, attaching itself a little more closely to the verb. That's, I think, all I'll say about that translation. I guess have any questions on that? All right, Caleb, you're up.
Right. Most is how, but how he now sees. We do not know. Or how not eyes.
Or how enoixen. Okay, that means he, she, or it opened. So talking about Christ or how he opened, we could say.
How he opened his eyes. Do not ask him. He about himself. He will speak for.
There you go. Exactly right. But how he now sees, we do not know. Or how he opened his eyes, we do not know. Ask him, he will speak for himself. We've got, for that last verb there, the sigma, tense formative, tells us it's future tense. It's from laleo, so we know it's going to be he will speak. Periautu, for himself. About himself maybe, but the most natural translation in English would be he will speak for himself. This is an imperative form which we haven't studied yet. That's why the answer is given us in parentheses. Yeah, the rest I think is pretty self-explanatory. Good job. These were the two translations from the test. And overall we did good. We did good. Any questions on these guys?
Yeah, one. Right after the A, then the or. That tis there, that's not how, that's something else, right? Someone or something.
It is an interrogative here. It would be probably how, because it has the accent. If it didn't have the accent, it would be someone, something, certain one, certain thing. The tis with the accent is an interrogative, and pretty much it can have it be any one of those words, like how or which
Who?
or why or who. Yeah.
Okay.
And the reason we know how, I'm being sensitive to the broader context, which doesn't appear here. But the question is, the Pharisees kept asking the parents, what happened? Well, they didn't know. All they knew was that they had a blind son, and he now sees, and that's about it. But they were trying to find out, well, how did he do this? Possibly they're asking about who it was, but how he now sees, we do not know. Or if we said who opened his eyes, we do not know. It might be who in the context, how or who, but the tis with the accent is an interrogative question. Okay? All right, let's look at some of these words. This one, we're going to skip this one for now. And we'll go straight to the words that will appear on the homework. If you guys haven't done the homework yet, this will give you a little head start on it. Let's parse these out a bit. The first one is pistuamenen. It's a participle because it has the morpheme, the participle morpheme of menen. we've got for these present participles or continuous participles, we have a few morphemes. Let me write them out right here before we start parsing. We have should become pretty familiar, the nu tau. That is the active participle morpheme for the masculine and neuter. In the feminine, and by the way, since the stem ends in the tau, they're going to follow third declension formation patterns.
Yeah.
All right, and let me just throw this out there, and we'll review it as we go. Then the feminine participles are going to take the participle morpheme of usa or use. These are the little features of the word that indicate to us it's a participle. Just like a tense formative, you take sigma alpha for the aorist, elusa. The sa tells us, oh, it's aorist indicative. The nu tau, the usa, will tell us that it is an active participle. And the middle passive is going to take this one, mena or mene. When we see these features in these words, it tells us that it's a participle. So here we have menen. That is look at it, all right, that's the middle passive participle morpheme. And it's not mena, it's mene, so that means it's feminine. That'll give us a head start. Now, one more thing about declensions here. If it has the nu tau, we're looking for third declension endings. If it has usa, first declension. If it has mena or mene, well, just like most of the nouns that we've studied to this point, like logos, ends in an omicron, or the stem ends in an omicron, so it's second declension, and it takes all the second declension case endings, the ones that we studied first. And if it ends in an eta, it's first declension.
So if it's active, it's third declension. If it's middle passive, it's second declension, right?
Yep. Yeah, it can be. So here, we've got the morpheme, which is mene, and now we've got the ending nu. How are we going to parse it then? For these participles, we want, remember they share characteristics of adjectives and of verbs. They share characteristics of adjectives in that they're going to have case, number, and gender. They take case endings. They have characteristics of verbs in that they have tense and voice. They can be, these are all, we're not going to see any that aren't present. These are going to be present or continuous for now. And then they can be active or middle passive. So how are we going to parse this? Winfield, you're up.
Sure. Well, pestu, well, pestu is the verb, the stem.
Yeah.
O is the connecting. Pestu, O is a connecting vowel. Mene tells us that it's passive, feminine, third declension, right? Passive, feminine.
All right, we'll just write them out as you say them. Feminine, passive.
It's got a case ending is new. So it's going to be I thought it's third. I thought middle passive was second. Wait, middle passive means it's second declension. So new would be.
We want the case, number, and gender. We've got the gender, and that's right. So the case and the number.
I don't even remember what case is.
Yeah. The case is whether it is if it's
Nominative or
nominative, genitive,
yeah.
dative, accusative.
New would mean accusative, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Accusative, singular. Feminine, path, a case, number, and gender. Case, accusative, number, singular, gender, feminine. Okay.
So we need the tense and the voice. You got the voice. What's the tense? Well,
Present tense.
Present tense. Or
Passive.
continuous, because like we said, these participles have contingent time or relative time. They don't denote time really by themselves, maybe in some rare cases, but they have relative time. And that is, okay, these are like bridge words, these are like middlemen or sidekick words, and that they're normally going to be associated with a certain noun and a verb. In some cases, no, but generally they go with two. Connect to a verb and connect to a noun. It's the verb, it's the indicative verb that they're connected to that's going to indicate the time. So you could have a present tense or continuous participle attached to a past tense verb, and that means the action happened in the past. It could be attached to a present tense verb, and that means that the action would happen in the present, or a future. That means the participial action would happen in the future. We'll see that more as we work more with these participles, but it's important to keep in mind that they have relative time. So we might call it the present participle. Technically, it's the continuous participle.
So English is what is believing.
Yeah, we could just say believing here. Well, if it's passive, maybe a little better to say this: being believed. So it still has the ing kind of action,
ING.
but it's attached to the being verb, and then you provide the past participle form of the verb. Being believed. Another thing, I briefly mentioned this in the video, is that if the participle is adverbial, a lot of times you'll want to include the keyword while. While being believed.
Okay. So this is in chapter 27 is present verbial, right?
Yeah.
Forms. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. It's just it's difficult to switch back into been in the verbs for so long. I just the whole case number and gender, going back to that, it's difficult.
I understand. Yeah,
Gotta make the transition.
we're coming off of verbs, and here's the overlap: is that they form from a verbal stem.
Yeah.
But they're different in that, well, the new thing is the participle morpheme. And then when we look at the end, it's going to be a blast from the past, in the sense that now we're going to see the case endings again. And if it has a case ending, then it's going to have case number and gender, because all of that is inherent in the case ending.
I have a question on that. If it's which is what I normally do, is I take the material from the book and try to find a pattern, or whatever it is, so I can memorize it and then try to apply it. As I learn these participles, looking at the verbal stem, connecting vowel, the morpheme, and then the case ending. Looking at the word that way, and then going through what we just did, from the case ending, determining it's accusative singular. The morpheme tells us that it is feminine, right? Feminine, passive.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
We know it's a participle, so it's why is that? How do we know it's present?
Well, it's hard to say right now because we haven't studied what distinguishes the different participle tenses. But if I can answer that, it's because the aorist participle will sometimes, just like we learned for the verb, sometimes it will form directly from the root. When that happens, it will look a little different from the present tense form. For instance, lab on, let's just say lab on toss. Or to keep it consistent with the word above, we could say laba menain. Then another option for this would be lambana main. What is it? Lamba. Yeah, lamban menain. Something like that. So this would be, say, well, how do we know it's present? Well, in some cases, it'll form from the present. Always the present will form from the present tense stem. But if we see some forms that form directly from the root, like we learned for the aorist verb, we know it's different. It can't be present tense. Other times, like let's take lu for example, lusa menain. How do we know this one's not present? Because of the sigma alpha.
Sigma alpha.
The aorist participle is going to keep the tense formative sigma alpha. It'll also have the participle morpheme, and then of course the case endings. And then the perfect participle would be like this: lalu menen. And we know that's not present because it has the reduplication. So we know it's, to answer your question, we know this one is present because it doesn't form in any other way. It doesn't have the sigma alpha, there's no reduplication, that kind of thing.
The second question to that is, it told us to memorize the 6 forms, which is basically, around the nominative singular and the genitive singular.
Right.
Now, as I look at those forms, you're really just it's really just the connecting vowel. The forms are the connecting vowel attached to the morpheme with the case ending, right? I mean, so we're basically memorizing those things based around the third declension and second declension, right? Isn't that what that 6 forms basically are?
Yeah, just like it is. It is.
In the active and the passive.
Yeah. Let me just kind of reduce down the rule. I'll list out the passive too. Lua menen, because this, I think, is really helpful review. I'm
sorry if I'm blowing up your class here.
No, that's why we meet. It's just to address questions, and I think even if Caleb feels like he has a good grip on this, I think the review will be helpful for him. All right, let me get this straight. We've got Lua menas, Lua menei. You're still with us, right, Caleb?
Yes, I am.
All right. Lua menu, and then we've got Lua. You guys can look at the paradigms and tell me if I'm missing something. I think I'm getting these right, but I might have to be a letter off or something. Okay, so the top one, the chapter says memorize the genitive, the nominative and the genitive because they follow third declension pattern. Yeah, that's very helpful because if you look at just like we learned with third declension nouns, we memorize the nominative and genitive because the genitive shows us the whole stem. And then we learn the article with it to tell us the gender. That won't be necessary for the participle. We don't need to know the gender of the participle because the gender is going to be however it forms. We'll look at the case ending to determine that. But technically, if you look at this middle form, that's first declension. We already know what the whole stem looks like. So we don't really need to have, it's just for consistency, it appears in the 6 forms. That's fine. Really, the main thing is if you remember what the masculine here looks like in the nominative and the genitive, you'll probably remember the rest. Because the neuter forms a lot like that. And it's always going to form from the same stem. Luant. So, 6 forms is fine. The main thing is that you remember luon and luontos, and you'll probably be okay. Now the middle passive forms, I think he says, again, just for consistency, memorize all the participles in their 6 forms. It's not third declension, and as long as you remember your first and second declension case endings, I don't think you need to memorize all 6 forms. I don't think that on any quizzes or tests that you'll have in my class, you'll have to list them out. But you will need to know how they form. So if you feel like learning all 6 for each voice is helpful, go ahead and do it. Otherwise, if you can just learn those 1 or 2 rules, then you don't have to memorize the 6. But you do need to be able to identify and parse the words in the class.
Well, and that was my thing. The 6 forms, I actually didn't, if I had a choice, I don't want to memorize 6 forms. I feel like, as we parse it, being able to recognize the morpheme And the case ending is probably, isn't that the most important?
Yep.
So, but now Luon, we have Luon is, would be new Tau, right? It's active, right? Yeah, active. So that's new Tau. Active is new Tau, right?
Right.
So something dropped out there, I believe, right?
Yes. Yes. There is a contraction in the nominative singular because technically it's nu tau plus the sigma.
Sigma ending, right? So then
Right.
the Tau drops out.
Sigma never follows tau at the end of a word. It drops out. Tau drops out too, and then the omicron ends up lengthening, probably to distinguish it from this form right here. Otherwise, they'd look the same, sound the same. But with a neuter, third declension, there's no ending. And so it'd just be luant, but tau never stems at the end of a word, so it dropped out.
Okay.
After that, it's all pretty self-explanatory. It's the stem plus the endings. The one exception would be the dative. The dative plural because the square of stops is applied there. We're going to move on here to phones, and Caleb, you can parse this one.
Well, it doesn't look like it has any of the morphemes in it. So I would say it's a noun, genitive, singular, feminine noun from phone.
Where is the phi? That always throws me off. There we go. Phone. Okay. And then the translation?
Of a voice or of sound or something like that.
Good. Something like that. We'd probably know better if we saw the full context, if this word appeared. Very good. Caleb, you worked through that so quickly and it was so easy for you. Why don't you take emarturesen?
Let's see. It has a son at the end. Okay, so that's from our true. Oh, it's got an augment, so it can't be a participle. Got the son is a third person plural ending. That is aorist active indicative third person.
Aorist active indicative from Martureo. Translation?
Oh, they testify.
Good. Very good. Little review for the aorist. The sigma alpha is the tense formative. And it's got that new ending, so it's third plural. If it was just emarturesa, remember that first aorist in the first singular doesn't actually have an ending. The other past tenses will take a new ending in the first singular, but not the aorist. And you did that. You caught that because you said it's third plural rather than first singular or third plural. Good. Okay. Let's just go to the translation here. We could do one more here. Let's go straight to the translation. These are the warm-ups. And I'll do the first one. Anabino means I ascend or I go up. But here it's a participle, and Ais Jerusalema would be into Jerusalem. So we could just say something like ascending into Jerusalem. Or something like, it could be as extensive as this, while they were ascending into Jerusalem. or while they are, while they were, depending on the timing of the main verb it's modifying. Now, why would we put they? Give either of you guys comment on that?
Plural.
Nominative plural.
Exactly,
That's
it's because the case ending tells us whether it's singular or plural. So if we're looking for a noun in the context that it's modifying, we're probably looking for something like autoi, them. We've got a group of people here. But even if it doesn't appear in the context, we know from the participle that it's plural. While they were ascending into Jerusalem. And it doesn't have the article like that. If it did, it'd be the ones who are ascending into Jerusalem. But since it is an arthrous, or without the article, I included while. Generally, that works if it's adverbial like this. It's a key word. Okay, let's take a look at this. Winfield.
Okay. So asides depart. Adon is right. Let's go to hupag. I'm gonna go to the verb hupagantas. So hupago is I depart. Nutau participle is active. Third declension. Alpha sigma is make it accusative plural, right? Alpha sigma would be accusative plural. So accusative plural. Accusative plural. So they departing. They were departing.
Let's translate this first part, and then I think that will help us with the participle. Athon looks like apon. Athon is forms. That's one that changes roots completely, so it's a little harder to identify. It's from horao. It's an aorist form, so they saw. They saw.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That was I think that was one of my questions from Raho, right? Yeah. That was from the translation from 25. Okay. Yep. Okay. They saw them departing.
Very good. They saw them departing. Okay, here's the question. Who was departing? Or let me put it this way. You know what? That is a very condensed, perfect translation. Sometimes
there's no article,
it
right?
might
So
appear
it's adverbial.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is good. It's concise, and it more clearly communicates what exactly is happening here. They saw them departing. If we say they saw them while departing, the question comes up, who's departing? The they or the them?
In English, wouldn't it be them because it's closer?
Yes. I mean, if it was the they, you could say while departing.
They saw them, yeah.
They saw them. And that is a general rule, that your modifier needs to be closest to the word it's modifying, to clarify.
Yeah, but in Greek, there's no article there, which means it's adverbial, which would be applied to them. So it would be them. They saw them, so them was departing, right?
Exactly, because the ending on autus is accusative plural. That's a second declension ending, but it's accusative plural. And then this is the third declension accusative plural ending right here. So the ones who are departing are this group here. There's an understood group that's the subject that's doing the seeing. But yeah, the action of departing goes with the autus. They saw them while departing. Or that's why I kind of would probably choose that translation. It's a little shorter, and it's a little clearer without adding verbiage. They saw them departing. We'd have to look at the wider context to see if the word while is really necessary for understanding or not. And if
So
it
could
was,
you add the
we want to
article? So it
clarify.
could be the Adon Altus, and then the article who I don't know how to say that.
Hubagontos. Yeah.
What would the article? You could put an article in front of that, and would that mean that they were they? Would that change it to they?
Let's see if it had an article. Let's just see what that looks like. They saw them, the ones. I think that's feasible as a Greek grammatical construction, but it would be unusual.
Okay.
The effect of
So
it.
that's not really a good rule.
What's that?
So then the article isn't really a good rule to keep in mind.
Well, the article is a good rule to keep in mind in the sense that technically hubagontos is more adverbial. They saw them while they were departing. But departing in English here, it's still functioning adverbially. It's just you don't always need the while keyword.
Okay. So you could make it. Okay, I got it. I'm tracking. I got it. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I was just thinking here, they saw them. It possibly would appear like that. Very rarely, I think. They saw them, the ones who were departing. It would be just a way of emphasizing the fact that it would emphasize the group was the one that was departing, essentially. But it's a little awkward. I don't know if it ever appeared that way in Greek or not. Okay, Caleb. Here you go.
Oh, apestilon is a liquid aorist of apostello. So, I mean, they sent prosauton to him. Luntes participle calling him. So they sent him calling him.
Okay. Good. They sent to him, calling him. That sounds fine. Again, it does not have the article, so it's more adverbial. We could put, they sent to him while, or maybe even, in this case, by, calling him. If we look at the wider context and we see that really these two actions went together, by calling him, they were actually sending for him. Then there are some times when by is a fine key word to include with the participle.
I was looking, after doing my translations, just looking the verses up, seeing how they're translated, and oftentimes the participles were just translated as verbs, as past tense verbs. That's kind of interesting.
Yes, yes. They sent to him and called him, something like that?
Yes, that's
definitely
something.
It's because the participles were they were used differently. I mean, we don't use participles quite as freely as they did. Sometimes it just seems like extra verbiage in English. But if you make it a separate verb, then it sounds a little better.
You could even do like they sent and called to him, something like that, if you would get a little looser your translation.
Right, right. That's a great point, Caleb. The translation, the published translations, many times translate participles as verbs. There are times when, like I mentioned in the video, where the participles will just function as independent verbs. And even in Greek, they're functioning that way. And that doesn't happen very often, but it happens. Now, when you come to the published translations, it happens a lot more often because it just kind of makes for wordy English unless you just translate a good number of them as verbs.
Sure.
Okay, let's look at this one. Winfield.
Yeah. Well, let me see. Looks like vocab's right. I see something that looks like high priest, something with teaching, and maybe
Yeah.
cross, and it's probably something with praying.
Praselthan looks kind of like Prasukamai or
Prasukamai is.
it's the other one.
Yeah, it's, Prasukamai or Proserkamai.
Yeah, this is from Praserkomai. The last part is the
Is
aorist
a
form of
irregular
Erkomai.
formation,
Elthon.
yeah.
Elthon.
Hate that stuff. Yeah, so Proser.
So we got, let me just help you a little bit get started. That's the verb, and the subject comes at the end.
Yeah.
And the way
So
we're
it's
going to
gonna
know, you go ahead.
Plural. Well, I'm just looking at. All right. Did that? Kappa is what was that? Was Kappa one of them? One of the, I thought perfect. So that, one of the, I thought Kappa was one of the perfect forms of the participle.
I think
Yeah.
in this case, the cap is part of the stem.
Didasko? Yeah, I have no idea.
No, you have a good idea, Winfield.
I see New Tal in there with the iota ending, which would tell me it's probably dative singular, right? Iota
Yeah.
ending,
Yeah.
dative singular.
Let's start with this. Let's start with what we know. This is the nominative case, right?
Yeah, because the article OI.
Got it. Let's translate the subject and then the verb. And once we have that, we'll figure out what to do with the participle.
The high priests,
Yeah.
the chief priests. Yeah.
So you've got erkomai, and it has the preposition pros on the front.
I mean, it means to go to.
Yeah.
Come to, go to. The high priest go to. Go to them. Go to.
Go would be present. And this is the aorist, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
'Cause
Yeah,
we
why?
have-
Because I don't know. I have no idea why.
Here. No problem. No problem. Let's review real quick. We got erkomai. That would be the present tense form of I come or I go.
If it's an irregular formation, I'll never know it. At least not right now.
All right. Elthon is this is one. Erkomai is a verb that changes roots as it changes tenses. Past tense is eilthon. It looks completely different, but it means the same thing, only the past undefined action. And then the future would be elusamai. It's deponent, and again, it changes roots. Hardly identifiable. You just have to memorize it. Well, it's this eilthon above, pros eilthon, is the aorist past tense. So we're going to translate it as past undefined action. Instead of the high priest go to, if it happened in the past, the high priests
Went.
There you go. The high priest went, and then we've got directional noun. Dative case, generally the keyword is to. We're going to keep it here. The high priest went auto.
Went to teach. Didasko. What is Didasko?
So the dasko is going to be the participle. It is. Let's first translate the noun. The high priest went to him. Does that make sense? From autos.
Yeah.
The high priest went to him. And the to actually comes from the pros, and it's reinforced by the fact that this is the dative.
Sure.
The high priest went to him, and here we go. Here's the. Let's just translate. We know. All right. Didasko means I teach. We see the stem there. Didask means teach. We see the participle morpheme. And then the fact that, all right, it has the Yoda ending that goes with the Yoda subscript over here, which means he was the one doing it, not the chief priest. But this has dative singular, just like the him here, the he. So the high priest went to him, let's just say teaching. But if we just write teaching, it's so general, we don't really know who's teaching. The didaskonti modifies auto. They match in case, number, and gender. So we've got to figure out a way to clarify in our translation that he was the one who was teaching. How would we do that? The high priest went to him.
I have no idea. The high priest went to him teaching. They went to him while they were teaching. Wow.
While, and it wasn't them, because you see how these match here. The high priest.
Him while he was.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Wimpy. You got it. I think maybe you're just a little tired or something. I think you got this.
No, I've been struggling with this for like 2 weeks with the translations. That's why I said I can't believe I did well on the test, but just
Okay.
I got lucky.
The high priest went to him while he was teaching. Let me just review this, if it seems confusing. Generally, if we see it's a participle, it's going to be the form of the verb ing. And then we need to figure out what it's modifying. In this case, it's modifying the him. So the big question in translation is, how do we translate that to make clear that he's the one who is teaching? And that's why we'd put it this way. The thing I said about relative time is that the participle itself denotes either continuous or undefined action or perfective type of action. If we look at this is modifying, the high priest went to him, and while they did, he was in the process of teaching. So the verb, the main verb is aorist, it's past undefined, which means that when we include any like understood verbs, like right here, to clarify who is teaching, we'll use a past one because the main verb is past tense. There's nothing in the participle itself that tells us it's past time. The past time actually comes from the main verb. Okay, I don't know if that's making sense or not. One other thing is that the participle always is going to agree. If there's a noun in the context that it's modifying, they're always going to agree in case, number, and gender, which is what happens here. You can try to let that sink in, Winfield. And Caleb, let's come to the. Let's do this one. And then we'll look at our translations.
All right. And of the non-plural participle, first of all. Cut. I can't remember where it's from.
Kathema, I don't know if we've had that yet. It means I sit. And this is.
Right, that was a vocab word for this chapter.
Okay.
Right.
Good.
Okay, so, sitting down. Israel. So that's they guarded him.
Okay. It's a good translation. One tweak would be the eterun. You translated it as past tense. That's right. The question is it aorist or imperfect?
Oh, it's imperfect.
Good.
Okay.
So we'll just tweak our translation here.
So they were guarding.
There you go. And sitting down, they were guarding him. Okay, so here's an example of something that would probably be translated with two verbs. And they sat down and guarded him. And they sat down and were guarding him. Something like that.
All right.
Okay. So you guys haven't started the homework, have you?
I've already turned it in.
Good.
I just started working on the parsing today,
Okay.
this morning.
All right. Okay.
I'm still memorizing the participle stuff.
Which numbers were due today? For the translation, I don't remember offhand.
I think they're due Saturday, aren't they? It's
Okay,
one to
Saturday,
10.
maybe Saturday, sure.
I think it's
1 through 7, maybe?
I think it's 1 through 8.
1
yeah,
through
1
8.
through 8 and of translation and 1 through 10 of parsing, I think.
Okay. Well, let's look at these three. Caleb, did you have any questions on the ones you turned in? Any that gave you particular problems?
No, not that I didn't figure out.
Okay. Good. Let's take a
There were
look
some
at
harder
number...
ones.
I'm sorry?
There were some harder ones, but
Yeah.
I don't remember what they were now because they're all written down nicely.
Okay. All right, so number 8. If you guys have your books open, I'm just going to read it. We've got a few little words, a little confusing to know how exactly to translate it. Hos. Hosen. Hostein. Probably translate it, but now in Jerusalem, as it was in Jerusalem, ento pascha ento erote. I wrote that out here because it's a little strange looking. Ento pascha ento erote. Pascha is the Passover. Erote is the feast. Ento. A lot of times ento with a dative like that means during. During the Passover, during the feast. Many believed in his name, seeing his signs or miracles which he was doing. I just wanted to point that out for number 8. It's kind of a strange construction. Number 9.
I had another question on number 8 as far as how the beginning went
Okay.
with the post and
Yeah.
I put but being as he was in Jerusalem, since you have two forms of aim either, one participle and one.
Okay. Well, the first one is actually not a participle. I think you're thinking of it. Possibly it could be hon. Hos. The participle will have the rough breather. You're right about that, but it will also have an accent.
Oh,
And if it was talking about Christ in this case, it would have to be the nominative singular hon, because he's the understood subject. And when there's a participle which is modifying the subject, it'd have to be nominative singular.
okay, makes sense.
Okay, yeah. But if it was hon, you would be on the right track with your translation. This is, I think you have to be a little idiomatic, something like, now as it happened, or now as it was, something like that.
Alright.
Okay. Oh, I forgot the translation's right here. I should have removed that. Alright. Let's take a look at number 9. Totas then. Proselthen. They came. I'm sorry. Proselthen is, it's got that epsilon nu, so that's third singular. Then somebody came, and if we look a little bit later, we know it's the mother of the sons of Zebedee. That's a big subject. Then the mother of the sons of Zebedee, proselthen, came to him. And then we got the, what's that?
So after, meta after?
Yes, meta is sometimes after. If it's with the accusative, meta means with if it's with the genitive. So, Winfield, why don't you translate the rest? Then the mother of the sons of Zebedee came to him.
With ton huion, with the sons to cross. Prosecute. What is worship?
Yes, that's right.
Came to him.
Meta ton huion autes.
So, is that sons?
Yes.
With her sons to worship, and
Okay, I'll put to worship.
Iteo is that an ask? Is it Iteo? Isn't that the ask? I ask, not to worship and to Oppo. Not sure for Oppo. Away from. I don't know Itusa. I don't know what Itusa.
From maybe it might be the vocab that's thrown you for a loop, Winfield, or it might be the strangeness, the strange appearance of the participle morpheme. If it's not familiar to you yet, it looks strange on words. But basically, what you need to do is, if you take off the morpheme, you've got ite, which is from iteo. Let me write it out over here. Does that look familiar to you at all?
Yeah, isn't that I ask?
You got
it. They were asking?
Yeah.
And yes. Asking and wait, so with her sons to worship and to ask him ask asking. What's present active? What is that? It's ing.
Yes.
So, I mean, I know it's asking or while asking.
All right. Yes. Let's just put the ing for now, and then if we want to come back and clarify, we can. We got. Then the mother of the sons of Zebedee came to him with her sons, worshiping, and asking. T without the accent.
It's certain one, someone, certain,
Or something.
or something. Asking something from him?
Yes.
From.
So the question is, if we go back to the participles, do we need to add while or by to clarify? Because it says, the mother of the sons of Zebedee came to him with her sons, worshiping and asking something from him. I think that's pretty clear. I suppose that someone might say, what was she or were all of them worshiping and asking it? And if you read on in the context, you can find out that the mother's mainly the one asking. I guess I would still leave the question, were the sons coming and worshiping? Maybe it's somewhat inconsequential, but it is something that is specified in the Greek, that she's the one who came doing that. Her sons were with her, but she was really leading in this effort. And we know that because if you look at the participle, it's feminine singular. And here it's feminine singular.
What I did when I translated this was I translated proskunusa as kneeling instead of worshiping.
Good. Yes. Yeah. It often does mean that.
Because it doesn't seem like she's exactly worshiping with the request. And just to me,
Yeah.
that's what it seems.
Yeah. It's a good point, Caleb.
Yep.
All right, Caleb, you can do the last one here, number 10.
Sure. Didayasune. Daskalos. Righteousness. Righteousness of God. Rotai. I don't know if that's one we had. Oh, has been revealed in the book.
Is this what you said?
Yes, has been revealed. That's the answer they gave in the book because we haven't learned that form yet. That word. Martu Rumena. That is,
Marturumene.
oh yes, morphine there, so. Passive. Having been testified to.
Being born witness.
By law and the prophet.
Good. The righteousness of God got a perfect middle passive verb, which means to reveal, has been revealed. Marturumene, that is a present or continuous middle passive participle, has been revealed. We can just put being testified by the law and the prophets.
I did.
Oh, is that what you said?
Oh, no. Sorry, I what I was doing there was trying to match the verb there.
Oh,
Has
gotcha.
revealed.
Gotcha. Righteousness of God has been revealed. All right. I don't think generally we'll want to transfer the have or the has to the participle as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Generally, no. It will be understood. We'll translate it the way that we're learning right now, and usually it'll be understood that the time is still relative to whatever the time is for the verb. Righteousness of God has been revealed, being testified by the law and the prophets.